So we started with replacing LPG, and post that we started also working out on how do you make the customer switch, because it's a big decision.
Yes.
If you're a restaurant owner,
Yes.
using about 5 or 6 cylinders of
That's a
LPG.
ground level problem, because
and then
execution and then implementation towards.
so and you're suddenly popping up with bioenergy, branding it as carbon lights, and then how do you what happens if you don't supply? So we solved for them to have assurance on the logistics, continuous supply commitment, all of that. And then as we went along, we started discovering that okay, this alone cannot make a business case. It's great start. It will obviously take a huge load of how do you create a business model around it. So if you're putting out any amount of waste, you have to pay for its being processed. So it's closing the loop. That's still not predominantly very very mainstream in India.
Correct.
And whether you think about even coal being taxed, right? That is the early days, indicators that polluter pay principle. And now if you go down to the most granular level, where if you're a household generating waste, and then you pay up for a authorized waste management company to pick up the waste from your household, that itself is a model of how to actually be responsible and sending the waste to the right destination.
Very true.
Right. So you could do a bit, and it's not big money. It's like you're talking about 200 rupees per month. If you're in Bangalore, 200 rupees per month to then get a complete
that's something the viewers should listen to this very carefully, because this is where with all your challenges and everything, and the turnkey, when you complete the circle, when you complete the circle, and when there's an amount associated to it, and when that amount is not that huge, then I think it goes into that level of understanding at all levels.
Just think about it. If you want Singapore kind of environment, you also need to pay for it.
Correct.
And then the question is like, why should I pay for it? But think about it, like all the health benefits, the cleaner environment, those. And like look at somebody coming from like you're coming from north. I mean, I don't need to tell you about the kind of pollution in Delhi, right? I mean, if
the world knows it today.
I mean, we would love to focus on other feedstocks like the Punjab or the Delhi problem. But again, it's a bigger, deeper topic, and currently we are south down, south in Bangalore. So we have stayed focused on let's solve for one.
Let's start here. Let's start here.
Because even the stats here that like Bangalore produces like 5,000-6,000 tons on a daily basis. It's 150,000 tons across the country. So it is a major feedstock that either you're sending it to landfills and creating all this nuisance, or you divert and produce methane. But another biggest thing that we didn't realize early in our journey is the kind of nutrients and the organic carbon that can go back into the soils around the city. The farmer feeds the city, the city feeds back the organic matter back into the soil, and it's in
circular.
It's completely circular. And the kind of soil health that most farmers are working today, and it's what we're doing to them, or at least what the ecosystem we're creating around them is not fair. They're not getting good organic matter to go back into the soil, and there is this organic matter causing all this nuisance. Like it just doesn't make sense.
And over the years, it has just happened all over the years. I think last 3, 4, 5 decades. And it has to change now.
Absolutely.
I mean,
and just think about it. We're spending like 2 lakh crores annually giving subsidies to chemical fertilizers like urea and DAP, and we're not putting enough effort to even take what is there in the city, process it properly. So, like, look, source segregation is not a challenge, because I know the next thing will be, can we segregate the waste? It's a very simple thing. I mean, if you see the data and our plant, you can do anytime, any visit. The maximum contamination that's reaching in our plants is about 5%. Any given day, it's less than 5%.
So there's a lot of awakening, actually.
So people do respond when they see that the waste is actually sent for processing. It takes about 3 months to 6 months. You start doing every day the same thing. So it's Bangalore is also very fortunate to have door-to-door collection systems. Right? Any city to make this work needs to have door-to-door collection.
That's right.
Because you need to attack the problem at the source. Someone like Padma Shri Balram in Kormangla, or Dr. Shanti in HSR. These are all the leaders who have like gone really deep to solving the problems. Even for that matter, Hasrudala Innovations, they have the NGO arm which is all
Somebody
about
you work very closely
very
with.
closely.
Yes.
And the kind of work that they have done all these years has created a platform that will enable a lot more projects to start off with source segregation concept.
Of course.
I mean, I think also someone like Sahas, right? So we are working with almost all these key pioneering leadership companies who've thought about how to create this ecosystem where different streams of waste are sent for different processing. And if we just focus on MSW, 60% of that is organic, comes into our facility, clean, sorted waste, and that's picked up that way. It's not coming to our secondary station. I mean, there is a possibility, but it's very, very minimal. And that's what, when people start seeing that it's finally getting sorted, goes into processing facilities, because your organic fertilizer, people talk about, oh, why don't you do like mixed processing and then end up putting machinery to sort it out.
People have to understand this. It's a circle. And at the end of the day, if it's an organic fertilizer that's used for cultivation, it's actually coming back to you only. So all the benefits is what you get when you segregate. Your associations with your objective and the mission that you have in last 5-7 years out of this whole decade, and these associations, how have they worked? In how have they worked as in together with you for getting this out, and for people and the state of Karnataka to begin with, and the establishments that you've just set up somewhere, in, let's say, in Telangana or wherever. How has this association worked, and how these companies work together with you? As you just mentioned a little bit about it, if you could detail it out.
So again,
which is very important, I think.
Deep topic, but I'll tell you what, at the core of all this is the intent.
Yes.
Okay, let me
absolutely.
It's the intent. So people who say that, right, whoever is like, talking about, oh, this is a huge problem, can't solve it.
Right.
That's because there has to be political intent, there has to be community intent.
Correct.
And we would always recommend that there's community involvement in these projects.
Yes.
Otherwise, until communities are not involved, even the political leadership is not. You get what you demand, right? Even
course,
whether you talk about roads, traffic, waste, everything is all interlinked, and it starts with the community and the people. And we've been in projects now that can be a blueprint for various other cities, where, let's say, Siddipet project, it took us
I did get an opportunity to see that project.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So back then, Finance Minister Harish Rao, he said that, look, I want this to be solved in my constituency, and I want my city to be fully clean.
Which is fair.
Yeah. And the conversation was, and it was Dr. Shanti from Bangalore. She was advising him, and she said, look, these guys have done it in Bangalore. Let's all work together.
Correct.
And the moment we started the project, he said, by the time the construction is done, we will make sure that we have clean sorted waste. That's my assurance.
Wow.
So it was intent. He announced it and then figured out a plan.
Intent.
And then he went on the ground on a daily basis for the first 2-3 months. And the whole thing changed. Like, the municipality is fully clear that, the big man wants it. So it starts at the top, but then, everything trickles down. And it's not rocket science. It is doable. We get clean sorted waste. And what started out, for about 3 months or 6 months awareness, 3-4 years down the lane, we are still getting sorted waste, clean waste, segregated, directly delivered by the municipality. And of course,
that's amazing.
The commissioners who have also come into those positions have maintained, because you have a set president to follow, right? You can't spoil a project, right? You've created it.
So tell us a little bit more.
So that's one project that I have real insights, because I've involved from day one, from the discussions till the execution, and it's a 15-year contract as well. No, it's actually 20 years. So we continue to run the project for next 20 years.
Right.
Now, similarly, if you pick like what happened in Kormangla, see, these were the small tiny projects that gave us the confidence that if you can do it at 5 tons, if you can then do it at 10, then if you can do it at 25, then we did the Haroli with Hasrudala at
Correct.
50
That's
tons.
50 tons.
So then, you start like, having a roadmap on, yes, you can scale this.
Correct.
Now you went in, same thing happened in Kormangla, Resident Welfare Association, President Padma Shri Balram.
Right.
She wanted to make sure it was the RWA along with under her leadership, and they wanted a simple thing, that they wanted the waste to be processed within their ward. Within their ward.
Yeah.
So they came, saw our work, and so we had installed some projects in some of the temples, etc. So they saw that if temples can accept, why can't a small ward like ours accept it? So we executed that. And again, there it
We're
was
looking at about 8 to 10.
Yeah.
8 to 10 on daily basis.
Yeah, this is about a 10-ton facility now. Governments will change, but the problems will remain if they don't solve.
Correct.
So every government, whichever comes into power,
Has
wants
to
to have clean roads, waste being processed scientifically. Nobody wants to spoil the show, right? Because it's more problem for them.
Correct. Eventually, on the long run, it's a connected problem. It's a connected problem.
So that's another example. And now, current Deputy Chief Minister, D.K. Shivkumar, he is also completely behind solving this.
We heard about
waste.
that.
Yeah. We have a project that is coming up, which is going to be one of the largest projects for the
one of its kind in India.
One of its kind in India, because we've conceptualized it with thinking that, look, while we are with MSW and CBG and organic fraction is getting CBG, what will happen to the rest of the streams?
Correct.
We need a solution for dry waste. We need a solution for any of the rejected producers. So you have 100% solution. So we're in the early stages of conceptualizing what could be a first of its kind integrated waste to value park, where every stream of waste comes in, gets processed, gets converted into useful products.
Right.
So the big chunk of it is 60% organic component gets converted to biomethane and organic fertilizer to solve 60% of it.
Okay.
Of the balance 40%, our partners Hasirudala and the entire they have deep expertise in this, and they firmly believe that if you put right systems checks in place, you can solve it for almost another 30%. So in a city, if you're producing 10,000 tons, you could process scientifically almost 9,500 tons. Okay, the 0.5, say 5 to 10% is what you can't really. That is a systems problem. Like you're creating single-use plastic that cannot be recycled, etc. So I mean, so you have to fix it at that end also. But you can either obviously, we want very least amount of quantity, whatever a city produces, to be burnt.
Correct.
Because that's not resource recovery.
Incineration is not the solution.
It's not the solution either. But but I think there will be some amount that has to be burnt, just because we can't fix all the problems overnight.
But not on the course of making electricity out of it or generating energy out of it.
Yeah. So
that's not the solution.
Bangalore has a Birdi waste energy plant. I think there will be still a requirement for every city to have 1 or 2 such plants. Because what you can't make into CBG, you will then
do 100% conversion,
and whatever material recovery cannot be done and recycled. Like for example, one of our investors is Ecoline, Senthil from Karur. They make PET bottles into proper T-shirts, and even products that can be further it's all upcycling. They have a clothing brand called Ecoline. They have apparel, so multiple applications they supply to car manufacturing companies. So it's not like people are just just proposing solutions that are just as a hobby. These are mainstream
on the ground
commercial solutions, which can be
viable solutions,
and they're doing more than about 100 crores in top line. That's the business that they've built single-handedly. So I think every stream of waste needs a solution. Even construction demolition waste are one of our known companies. They're working into construction demolition waste, converting back into construction material. So I think if we all start thinking about how do you back to the point, intent.
Intent.
I think
that's where it starts.